Good morning. I'm Teacher Rose, and welcome to the Introduction to Philosophy of the Human Person. The hand is one of the most symbolized parts of the human body. It is often used to depict skill, action, and purpose. Through our hands, we may learn, create, and accomplish. Hence, the hand in this learning resource signifies that you as a learner is capable and empowered to successfully achieve the relevant competencies and skills at your own pace and time. Your academic success lies in your own hands. For today's presentation, it is about freedom and responsibility, which includes Roman numeral number 1, human action versus acts of man, Roman numeral number 2, human freedom and obligation, Roman numeral number 3, intellectual choice versus practical choice. Freedom. One of the most abused and misunderstood words during these times. A well-loved concept which ancestors fought for, yet poorly understood by the present generation. There is always something in being free. People associate freedom with one's ability to do whatever he or she wants to do. Well, the concept of freedom is as wide as the universe. There are so many notions about it. Some claim to be free means to do anything, regardless of their actions' consequences. Some say freedom is the ability to exercise one's will towards the good. Others even say there is no such thing as freedom, that we are governed by natural law. In this presentation, you will be guided about the basic philosophical teachings about freedom. The emphasis is on understanding freedom, importantly, the dynamism of choices and consequences. You will face bigger decisions soon. It is important to see how your choices are made. Do you make decisions based on their impending consequences? Or you simply do it because it is what the present situation is asking from us? Human action versus acts of men. An act that is performed only by a human being and thus is proper to man. Not every act that a human being does is a distinctively human act. Some acts that human beings do are performed also by animals. Like, for example, vegetative acts and acts of perception and emotion. When a human being does such acts, they are called acts of men, but not human acts. Acts of men are actions shared by humans and other animals, while human acts refer to the appropriate actions of human beings. What makes an act performed by a human being distinctively a human act is that it is voluntary. That is, an act in some way under the control or direction of the will, which is proper to man. One can therefore identify the human activity with the voluntary act. A voluntary act continues either by the will, like an act of love or choice, or from another human power that may be motivated by the will, either by an act of intellect or by the sense of reasoning or emotion. Even a gesture commanded by the will can be a voluntary act. Here is Aristotle's distinction of voluntary and involuntary actions. Voluntary actions, these are acts originating from the individual performing the act using knowledge about the situation of the act. So we have the classification of voluntary actions. Letter A is voluntary. So voluntary actions are performed from will and reason. Letter B is related to compulsion. It is considered as mix of voluntary and involuntary. It is more voluntary if the desire and choice has been performed, and involuntary if it has considered preferences or alternatives. For example, you are asked to perform a crime and your options are either you do it and your family survives, or you don't do it but they will be murdered. And here are the classifications of involuntary actions. Letter A is under compulsion, circumstances which are beyond the control of the agent and contributes none to the action. For example, a person was kidnapped, hence impossible to resist. Letter B, through ignorance of particular circumstances. For example, a man steals and ignorant of the law. Arrow or gun shot by mistake. Next is human freedom and obligation. According to John Mothershead, freedom and obligation are two indispensable conditions for morality to occur. Freedom is understood to be present when one is choosing a course of action, and he or she is taking full responsibility for consequences of his actions. Importantly, this is anchored to the individual's moral and rational capacity to discern what is right and wrong. In several meta-ethical traditions, obligation usually follows or arrives from freedom. Freedom can be said to be present if the human person is free in making choices in the realm of morality. That is, in making choices with regards to determining what is the right thing to do in situations and circumstances in his own life. So this can be summarized in our Filipino saying, buntot mo, hila mo. It is taking full responsibility for your actions and being obliged to do so. Hence, an action is not in the full extent of morality if a person does something while his or her freedom and rationality is altered or modified. This event can happen if the person's environment highly affects his judgment. When was the last time you see yourself escaping from the consequences of your actions? When was the last time you hide from the problems brought about by your irresponsible actions? We have the tendency to blame others for their choice of a course of actions. At present times, several marriages, most especially in the Philippines, are being brought to different court of law to be annulled. What is the main reason for this? Attorney Jim Lopez, in one of his books, says that most of the marriages which are tried in a civil courts are sagas of unending throwing of blame and accusation between two lovers, which can be simply be solved had one of the parties make himself accountable for a problem which sits between them. And for the last topic is about intellectual choice versus practical choice. Intellectual choice, this is a choice which is deliberately selected based on a moral standpoint. Basically, there are normative answers about what we ought to do from a moral system that we uphold and its moral principles. These normative answers would take into consideration the behavior which the society will accept. For example, when you are to decide in a moral issue, you can try to give intellectual choice as a normative answer. Here, you are simply assuming because you are not, as it were, facing that actual moral situation described in the dilemma. In this case, the answers that you are inclined to give are prescriptive in this imaginary and hypothetical situation. Next is practical choice, a choice which is born out of psychological and emotional considerations. Unlike the previously discussed type of choice, practical choices are made when confronted with the actual situation and usually affected by psychological aspect of the person embroiled in the moral situation or dilemma. For instance, psychological and emotional stress and lack of time to deliberate during an actual moral situation may affect a person's moral decision in the situation. A person may be engulfed by emotion that he may sometimes fail to make the right choice. Likewise, stress could make a person's practical choice inconsistent with his intellectual choice. According to Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher, freedom is independence of the compulsory will of another. And insofar as it tends to exist with the freedom of all according to a universal law, it is the one sole original inborn right belonging to every man in virtue of his humanity. Again, I'm Teacher Rose saying, share love to everybody, be a blessing to everyone. Thank you.